Hello, this is Fred at the Gate with today's devotional. I want to encourage those of you who may be having a challenging time as you're striving to be faithful and obedient to doing what God has called you to do. When you have an opportunity, read about the story of Joseph. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son because he was the son of his old age. And if you look in the 37th chapter of the book of Genesis and just read on, you will be able to see everything that occurred. However, with young Joseph, if we look at the fact that he first was thrown into a pit and then made it to Pharaoh's palace, there was a process between the pit and the palace. And I want you and I to understand that when we find ourselves striving to do what God has called us to do, we too may have our pits before we get to the palace. And there's an ABC that I want us to understand. A, adversity. You're going to encounter adversity. And so you have a decision whether you're going to succumb to the adversity or overcome the adversity. Joseph was wrongfully thrown into a pit after his brothers considered killing him. He was sold into slavery. Then he served in Potiphar's house, was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife of sexual misconduct, thrown into prison. But in Potiphar's house, God gave him favor. In prison, God gave him favor because God ultimately knew he was going to get him to the palace. So B is the belief. Now, this is really interesting. You cannot afford to overemphasize your calling and underestimate your character. The calling was on his life to be able to serve in the palace. But at 17, when he received this mighty dream from God, he shared it with his brothers. And everybody's not ready to receive your dreams. You need to know when to share and what not to share. So being young and immature, he did have the calling, but his character wasn't what it needed to be. And then that leads us to the C, the commitment. You have to be willing to go all the way from God's revelation up until God's implementation. God will reveal what he wants you to do and how things will work out. But you have to be willing to go all the way. You have to endure the pits in your life. You have to endure the prisons of your life. But God will be with you all the way like he was with Joseph. God can give you favor even in unfavorable positions like he did to Joseph. And Joseph made it to the palace. Pharaoh made him second only to himself. He ruled over all of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh, because God had already prepared to have him in the palace so that when the times of famine came, he would be able to save many lives. You and I both, in striving to do what God will have us to do, may find ourselves in the pit. But remember the ABCs: adversity, belief, and commitment. That will assure our place in the palace. Be encouraged.